Hello everyone, welcome to TN Sports Chat. I'm Patrick Matsinko. This is Emmett McCall. Different look, different format. We're sponsored now by Lehigh Valley Health Network. As you can see, my co-host is a little bit different. A little bit different now. Justin has moved on to great things, and I certainly wish him the best in everything that he's doing. Away from the Times News, but our show goes on. We are fully into the winter sports season. Girls basketball, boys basketball, wrestling, everything's really heating up. Swimming, it's cold outside, but our action is certainly heating up. Emmett, I mean, it's early in the season, but what are, I guess, just some initial thoughts that you have so far this year?
Well, it's nice. Sports Chat was mainly a football-related show that we started, but we decided to continue it through the winter and spring sports and the fall sports. So we're going to be going pretty much school year round with this show, and we're going to kick off the 2018 season by talking a little bit about our basketball and wrestling teams and what they've done through the first month of the season. We've had some really great individual performances, some great team performances, some surprises. Let's get started, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. You know, obviously, like you said, throughout the fall, we kind of just were football only and sort of wrapped that up. But now we have a great opportunity, I think, to sort of bring everybody, hopefully, a little bit of a different look, different kind of coverage, just for the sports that they read about, you know, every day in the papers. So
29 teams we cover in the winter sports season, and unlike football where you can cover the 8 or 9 teams that are playing that week every week, we're going to kind of mix it up, talk a little bit about some of the basketball, wrestling, swimming teams this week, different ones next week. Another thing we have on this show, a little bit, something that worked well later in the football season, you and Justin started it. We're going to have interviews during each episode. We're going to talk to some coaches, players, ADs, officials, and Lehigh Valley Health Network has also agreed to give us one of their doctors or physical therapists every few weeks. They'll come in and they'll talk about sports health related issues, concussion protocol, rehabbing injuries, weight management for wrestling, just things that pertain to high school sports, and get their take on that. So we're kind of excited about it.
Yeah, and again, I think it's just it's a great opportunity to kind of expand what we were already doing, and you know, just sort of maybe hone in on a couple of you know, specific things, you know, games of the week, athletes of the week, and I think it'll be fun to kind of highlight some of that stuff that we have going on throughout the season. So to kind of think about basketball, I guess, to kick it off, you know, we had obviously. You know, we had a great one last week just on Friday night with Pleasant Valley and Lehighton and the girls in the Lady Indian Holiday Classic. Lehighton was undefeated. You know, it was a great game, came back to force overtime. Pleasant Valley ended up holding off Lehighton, and you know, 2 big free throws from sophomore Cameron Caffrey forced overtime, and then the Bears scored the first 4 points in the extra period that kind of helped them pull away there. And we had a chance to catch up with Cameron Caffrey afterward and get her thoughts on the game. What are you thinking when it goes to overtime?
We gotta be calm. We need to trust each other and just trust everyone, trust what everyone's saying. Very high intensity game, and I knew that their fans were all screaming, but you just gotta tune it out, and you have all your teammates behind you, and I knew they trusted me and I trusted them, so I had to do it for them.
That was Pleasant Valley's Cameron Caffrey. Again, a great game, but you know, just one of many that we've had so far this season. You know, we had Northern Lehigh top Jim Thorpe for the boys in boys basketball in the Slatington Rotary Tournament on a late basket by Nick Sire. We had Pleasant Valley take Northwestern into overtime to win, you know, the Wilson Tip-Off Tournament. Tamaqua girls won their Lady Raider Tip-Off Tournament. You know, so we've had
second year in a row.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of great games, close games, overtime games. But we've also had a lot of, you know, individual performances and, you know, coaching highlights so far this season with some milestones that have been reached.
Right. We had 2 or 3 coaching milestones. We had Kaylee Kovac at Jim Thorpe became the school's all-time scoring leader earlier this year. She passed Celeste Robinson, who just played 4 or 5 years ago at Jim Thorpe.
Doesn't seem like that long ago.
No, had a great career at Mansfield, and now Kaylee set that record. Also on the Jim Thorpe angle, her father is Coach Rob Kovac. He had 2 milestones just recently. Actually, it was on Jim Thorpe's trip to Florida. The girls basketball team went down to Florida, played 3 games down there. They went 2-1. The first win was Rob Kovac's 100th at Jim Thorpe, and then the next night they beat Lincoln Academy. The next night, and it was his 200th coaching win overall. He had 99 previously at Panther Valley, so he reached 2 coaching milestones on back-to-back nights, which is pretty cool, pretty unusual.
It's and it's awesome. I think, and even when I talked to Coach Kovac after Kaylee got her milestone in a win over Panther Valley, a school that he also coached at, it was neat to kind of see him have that experience of not just coach but also dad. And then Peyton was there, obviously his sister that plays, and mom Lauren. We're all able to kind of be a part of that, and they did it at home, and I think it was very cool just to see that sort of community involvement, and it was a great atmosphere too, because it was a boys and girls doubleheader against Panther Valley, and it
was a big month for Kaylee because she signed Division I scholarship,
That's right.
Earlier.
That's right. And obviously she's going to be going to St. Francis, so obviously
right.
It's a great school. She has certainly everything ahead of her, but that was certainly one of just thinking of highlights, milestones, just to kind of have all of that with one team, one school. But Paul Bruto also got his 700th career win at Marion.
200 wins for Coach Kovac is really impressive, but Paul Bruto, we're at 700 now and counting, which is crazy.
Insane.
Just trying to figure out, that's 35 years of 20-win seasons. If you break that down to get to 700, which is. Yeah, that's pretty insane, like you said. I believe he has about 550 some at Marion. He also had 146 at Shenandoah when he was there. He coached Shenandoah for 10 years. He's been at Marion since 1990. State championship, four state championship game appearances, tons of league and district titles. It's been pretty
so
crazy
hard to
career.
do. To sustain that level of success, every year you kind of see a team that has a run, and maybe you get a good group of players, you have a class or two that maybe would come through, but to be able to sustain that and just to be able to have that kind of success, like you said, to coach for so many years and to think about what the average win total would be each season is remarkable, and speaks to what he's been able to do at Marion.
And once again, they're a young team this year, but Marion's off to 6-2 start so far, so it looks like the good times just keep rolling for the Phillies.
And now that's a team where Marion, you kind of maybe expect them to be in the hunt, in contention, but we do have some surprises, I guess, early on this season, on both the boys and the girls side. For you, just in terms of what you've been able to kind of look at, what are some of your surprises so far this year?
Well, I think some of the big surprises are the Panther Valley boys and girls basketball teams. If you look where they were last year and then how they've started this year, I think both Coach Pat Cramsey, Coach Dapper Lynn of the girls teams, I think they've got to be really excited about the positive starts to the season. Panther Valley boys, they're off to a 5-3 start. They only won 7 games all last year. They were 7-15 a year ago. 5-3 start. Rini Fagora, Tristan Blasco, both among the leading scorers in our coverage area.
Rini dropped 44
on Weatherly,
so
1 point away from a school record he was with that. So they've got the boys team off to a great start. On the other side, the girls team, and I did the preseason preview with Coach Lynn, and I could tell he was excited about the prospects, but he didn't want to put, we're going to make the playoffs, we're going to get this many wins on it, but you could just tell he thought the chances for a better season were right there on the brink. I think I put in my write-up that Panther Valley hasn't had a winning girls basketball season. It's almost 20 years. And right now they're 4-5. Panther Valley's off to a 4-5 start. Only had 2 wins all of last season. So, really positive progression. Freshman Erica Duboski's one of the leading scorers in the coverage area. She's averaging over 14 points a game. You got the Dacey sisters, Christina and Olivia. You know, you've got a lot of the volleyball players who have had 2 really successful District 11 championship kind of seasons back to back, and you've got Rochelle Filer, you've got 2 Duboski girls, 2 Dacey girls. They all played volleyball, and now they're all contributing to basketball, and I think that helps.
And there's that kind of trickle-down effect where, you know, success breeds success, and you can tell that they're super competitive. I mean, even when I covered the, you know, the Jim Thorpe Panther Valley game where Kaylee broke her record, you know, the Panther Valley girls were certainly upset that they lost, but I think they were excited that they were able to compete. And Coach Rob Kovac even mentioned that afterward, and he said that, you know, Panther Valley isn't going to be an easy out for anybody in the league this year.
And I think that was Coach Lynn's comment to me. They wanted to be, the initial goal they set was to be more competitive this year. I kind of looked at something you'll find in today's, in Wednesday's Times News. We started our basketball page today, and one of the notes in there is a year ago, Panther Valley's average margin of defeat was over 23 points. They were losing games. They got outscored 50-27 in, you know, games last year. So far through 9 games, they're being outscored by an average of 1 point a game. So obviously 4 wins, but even in the losses, a whole lot more competitive.
Absolutely, and you know, that was just something that I really took away out of an early season matchup where, you know, Rob Kovac said that, you know, he kind of thought they had them put away a couple of times, and they just kept coming back, and I think the more that, you know, the more games they play like that, the more they kind of believe it, and I think they're going to maybe make some noise later on this year.
2 other boys teams we have that are also in that early season surprise mode, I would think, are the Northwestern boys, off to a 6-2 start. A year ago, they won just 8 games. They were 8-14 a year ago, already 6-2. You know, and one of the losses was a really good double over. Was it double overtime?
I believe it was. I believe it was overtime.
But I mean, Pleasant Valley.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where you have a game like that early on in the season, and you're not maybe 100% sure what you're going to get. But you know, they lose. You know, they lose Trevor Cunningham. They lose Sam Seafried. You know, and then they come back with Sam Yadish. They have Devin Ballinger. They have kids that can play at Northwestern, and they gained that experience last year as underclassmen.
Right.
You know,
playing. Started a freshman, a couple sophomores last year, and the thing is, when you lose to a Pleasant Valley team who's an East Penn Conference team, Eastern Pennsylvania Conference team, even though you lose that game and it was a season tip-off tournament, it has to give you some confidence that you can play with the big boys.
Yeah.
Pleasant Valley is a 6A school, so Northwestern has to have a lot of confidence, and they built on that. It was a loss, but you know, they won 1-1 in that tournament, but now they're 6-2, playing really good basketball, and Colonial League season's just going to kind of hit full swing now after the holiday break.
And to think about that maybe on the girls' side too, to kind of go back to maybe Lehighton. You know, this is a Lehighton team that was, again, undefeated up until last Friday night, you know, a loss in overtime to Pleasant Valley. But the core group of that team returns for, you know, head coach Joe Breswick, first year at Lehighton, obviously has a ton of experience. But Skyland Faust, Aubrey Blasiak, you know.
2 of the top girls basketball players in the area. And you could say you're a little surprised that Lehighton was only 9-13 a year ago, and to be off to a 7-1 start, it might surprise you a little. But then when you think that they had pretty much everybody returning from that team, including Faust and Blasiak, who are both outstanding players, then I guess you really shouldn't be surprised.
And I know when Justin and I talked when we did our little season preview, we kind of said that they have, you know, they have so many starters back. They have Julia Fry, Thera Hibbler, you know, they lose Jada Whiteman, obviously, who was, you know, pretty massive for them last year, but they've kind of found girls that can, you know, fill these roles. And last week in that game against Lehighton, you know, they were down, you know, 40-29 at the end of the third quarter. They were down 44-32, you know, and it's just to be able to come back and take the lead late in that game. And again, Pleasant Valley forced overtime and eventually won, but that's remarkable because Pleasant Valley is a very good team, an EPC team. Yeah. They're 5-2 now. They're playing great basketball with Masani Francis, Cameron Caffrey, Ashley Schwank. You know, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but that's, I don't know that they're going to get much better competition on a regular basis this season.
And you have to give a shout out to first-year coach Joe Breswick, taking over the Lehighton program. Obviously, he's first-year coach at Lehighton, but many years of success as the Tamaqua girls basketball coach. And Joe's just kind of jumped right in there and has Lehighton playing really well. But also, you got to give some credit to former coach Eric Gidney.
Yeah.
He had I think the last 3 years he coached Lehighton, and what he did is he developed more of a year-round mentality with that program. Got him in a lot of summer leagues, had the girls playing kind of 9-10 months out of the year, which really helped because that group of kids that he took over, a lot of them, Faust was a freshman, I guess, when he took over, and he did a nice job of setting them up, and then Joe's just jumped in there and done a great job.
And he's sustained that, and he's taken it maybe to another level. But you see, like you said, even in summer league, winning tournaments at the Catasauqua Summer League and things like that. And again, it's just confidence for those kids, and it's been big so far this season, I think.
Right. So, and the final team I'd like to mention is the Palmerton boys basketball team, another team that only had 2 wins a year ago, and Palmerton is also 4-5 on the young season. Going to start their Colonial League run soon, but that's another team that was young last year, had some really young players.
First-year head coach last year.
First-year head coach, right? And now you can see they're kind of have the program established a little more. The kids have some experience and they're playing well early season.
And to kind of think too about sort of a comeback or just sort of a big win early. Just the way they beat Lehighton on that opening night, where they were able to just kind of shut the door on Lehighton and outscore them. I think what was it, 10-1 in the fourth quarter on opening night.
Yeah.
So that's big opening night. And again, you think about any of those games where a team can just kind of fold, but Ken Termini obviously has these kids buying in and playing really, really well.
Nate Doherty is having a great season. He's second in our area in scoring, averaging over 20 points a game. So he's kind of been leading them, but they get plenty of contributions and team to watch down the line.
Absolutely. And again, that'll all sort of pick up the more we get into these league schedules and kind of see who's doing what, who's where. But we've also had a lot of wrestling highlights, I think.
This is your stuff
early in the season.
And
thinking about our basketball page, which is going to start this week, our wrestling
and it'll run every Tuesday in the Times News. It's starting today, Wednesday, but for the rest of the year, you'll be able to find it in Tuesday's Times News.
And mine, the rankings and the columns each week will be either, did we say it's going to be Thursday?
Starting next week.
So next week, I promise, everything will be good to go and everything will be ready. But there's been a lot to kind of digest, I guess, early on in the season. Thinking about just last week, we had Caleb Clymer win a title at the Bethlehem, Wrestling Holiday Classic, which is
really tough competition.
Huge, yeah, and and I think that's massive for him. And that's a kid that was a state qualifier and obviously a state medalist. The last couple of years.
Has some pretty good wrestling genes there.
Yeah, comes from a family that knows what it takes to win those kind of matches. And just thinking back to our season previews, I read a quote where he more or less said it's kind of state title or bust for his senior year.
It's a pretty lofty goals.
Which is obviously a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation for any athlete. But I think if anyone's kind of equipped to handle it,
right,
he is built for it.
And he's also extremely talented.
Yeah.
Not just mentally built for it, but physically.
I mean, think about what he did at States 2 years ago, where he could barely walk with that hip injury, and he was knocking kids off just to get into a medal round, and then he forfeited out of his medal matches because he was guaranteed a spot. And that was more or less, I think, almost taken out of his hands as well. Just to kind of think about what he's capable of, it's going to be really exciting to see sort of where he ends up once we hit March and we get to the Giant Center in Hershey. But also last week, Jim Thorpe had a couple of kids. John Newhall, Ethan Mordaunt won titles at the Jim Thorpe Christmas tournament, which is big for them, I think, to kind of win tournaments at home, to do it in front of your, in front of your home crowd. And these are the kids, Will Schwartz, John Newhall, Ethan Mordaunt, Austin Williams. It's kind of almost like a Fab Four for Jim Thorpe.
Right.
And I think those are the 4 kids that Sean Albert and that team are going to kind of be looking at this year because they do have some forfeits. But
that's the cool thing about wrestling. I mean, Jim Thorpe doesn't have a full team, so they're not going to do really well in the dual meets. but they have some really talented individuals.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, they're fun to watch during the regular season, even if, like you said, there's a bunch of forfeits during the match. But when the postseason gets around, that's when
their
really
time
notice.
to shine.
Yep.
Yeah, and even to think about it from a team aspect, and you know, we have a couple of teams dealing with forfeits, but you kind of only, I guess, you just focus on the matches that are contested. You know, you try to outscore the team in the matches contested. And earlier this year, Jim Thorpe lost to Lehighton, but in the matches that were wrestled, they outscored them 24-21.
Right.
So you're just kind of looking at the matches that you wrestled, you know, sort of throw the forfeits aside and
just get better individually.
Yeah,
because wrestling is one sport. They do have team championships now, but it is a sport that it's really about the individual performances. Most coaches, most wrestlers will tell you, you know, everybody loves winning as a team, but it's kind of individuals.
And yeah, and I think that's always nice where if you think about Northern Lehigh, you know, a couple of years ago, winning a district championship, going to states, having great team success, but then you can also think, you know, maybe just last year, Ryan Farber for Northern Lehigh in a state championship match. And you could have a Kevin Gentile, you know, a kid like that for Jim Thorpe who is, you know, winning a state title. Might not have team success, but individual success is always possible. And we've had that. I mean, we had Palmerston's Lucas Chrisman won a title at Catasauqua's Rough Rider tournament earlier this year. Tamaqua's Bronson Strauss won a title at Bloomsburg Invitational earlier this year. And we had Panther Valley's Hunter Kennedy won a title at the Athens tournament and picked up his 100th career victory.
Milestone victory for Hunter. Brother of Tanner Kennedy,
both extremely talented.
Yes, really a great 1-2 punch. And Panther Valley's a team that has some really good individual wrestlers, but they're also relatively deep. They're not going to forfeit many or any weight classes. Coach Tim Robb's really done a nice job of building the interest in that program, getting some bodies out.
And that's the hardest thing. I mean, it's always like any sport, it's a numbers game.
Right.
You know, we've seen that even with a school like a Pleasant Valley, one of our bigger schools, a team that in recent years has had to forfeit a lot. And Northern Lehigh is kind of going through that right now.
They have 6 wrestlers, varsity wrestlers only, right?
So. And once injuries hit, and you know you have things that take kids out of the lineup, then it's even more pronounced, and it makes it even more difficult to overcome that. But I mean, those guys individually are doing, you know, extremely well. We have Tanner Kennedy and Jackson Bernard, a Northwestern wrestler, who are both ranked by Off the Mat in the state rankings at 160 pounds, and then we have Caleb Clymer and Hunter Kennedy, also ranked at 170 pounds, and then we have Bronson Strauss ranked at 220 pounds. So
it's 5 area wrestlers so far, and I think that list might even grow as the season goes on.
Yeah,
I think we'll have some pretty good local wrestlers.
And you see where things shake out. You know, kids drop in weight. You know, things start to kind of move around as the postseason approaches. And once you get those head-to-head matchups too, I think that's usually where you kind of see that sort of separation. That you get these kids to kind of wrestle each other, and you sort of see a little bit of what you have. And there's a great tournament on tap this weekend, the Anthracite Duels at Panther Valley. This Saturday, Panther Valley hosting 16 teams. Lehighton will also be there as well, sort of a round robin team tournament. So that'll be fun. I'll be there on Saturday, and we'll have coverage of that.
Stop by, see Pat.
Yeah, I mean,
and some great wrestling.
It'll be great, and this is always kind of what seems to sort of kick off our season. You know, once we hit these tournaments, and you know, it just sort of picks up from there. Before you know it, it'll be, you know, districts, regionals, and states.
And in basketball, the leagues have started already. A couple of the leagues have started, played 1 or 2 games, but now New Year's up, you'll see less and less non-league games. There's a lot of league games for the teams, so we'll see, you know, who can qualify for league playoffs and district playoffs. And we have some teams off to some really good starts. Tamaquah boys off to a great start, 8-1, and one of their top players, Braden Knobloch, has just come back last week after an injury he suffered during football season. So you know, that's
only looking up there.
They're playing really well. We talked about Northwestern, Pleasant Valley, Panther Valley. So a lot of good boys teams.
And Lehighton picked up a big win the Lehighton boys, first-year head coach Trevor Miller. You know, big win last night over Panther Valley. Panther Valley boys are playing well, and for Lehighton, that's It's a big win for them.
And you mentioned Trevor Miller. If you check out today's Times News, we have a really cool feature on Trevor and his father, Jeff Miller, who's the head coach at Northern Lehigh. Northern Lehigh and Lehighton played last week in the Slatington Holiday Tournament. So got a little feature about them going head-to-head. Trevor used to coach with his dad. He was an assistant at Northern Lehigh. You know, it's a really cool feature. You should check it out.
Yeah, and you know, hopefully, like you said about our basketball page each week, we'll bring you more more content like that, and I'll try to do the same, obviously, with my wrestling columns and rankings each week, which will kick off, next Thursday. So certainly looking forward to it. But
sounds good. And we'll be here every Wednesday night. Either most of the time be Pat and myself, but we'll have other members of the Times News Sports Department filling in occasionally. Like we said, interviews, talk about a number of the teams. You can find it on Facebook. It'll be downloaded Wednesday night, somewhere around 7, 8 o'clock. You can find it and check it out. We think it'll be a pretty cool experience.
And as always, going back to what we did in the fall, if you have questions, comments, suggestions, please feel free to comment, message, email, however is easiest for you to get in touch with us. We'd love to have some feedback and things that you're interested in. That's kind of the goal of what we're doing here, is to try to bring you what you're looking for and what'll keep you coming back too. So
right. Anybody you want to see us talk to, you have any ideas for a conversation, you just want to comment on some of the area teams, our email address, tnsports@tnonline.com. And like Pat said, you can also hit us up on Facebook and Twitter and send us messages.
Yeah, so we look forward to seeing you throughout the rest of the season. But for now, that's our first one in the books. So good job. It was fun and
big shoes to fill.
Yeah, but I think hopefully everybody likes it, and we'll just kind of keep it rolling throughout the season. So for Patrick Matsenko, this is Emmett McCall, and we'll see you next time.